5-Yard Rush, one of the best podcasts on NFL football in the UK.
What is happening, Rush Nation? We are back with another matchup show. Week 2 is here. We're setting those lineups. We're trying to think of ways to add to the win column, whether it's to get the first dub or to get the second of the season. We are here to prepare you for that. It was a good week with the rankings last week. It was a good week with some of the calls and the projections and predictions that we made. Yes, we have to take an L on a few, but yes, we also have to celebrate the wins as we did. And I felt that overall, the reads, the matchups went pretty closely to what I was expected. A few shocks, but not a ridiculous amount of shocks. So that's always a good place to be. It says that the work has gone well in the preseason. And if you want to get these ranks that are on the screen, join our Discord. So just hit the link below. Join the Discord. There's a channel in there for that. Also, as well, the FFCC, the main event draw has happened. That is all out there on the Discord in your chat, as well as also the Squid Game prompt that has dropped as well. So we are firing up already for this, but let's get straight into this. I want to try and keep it to 30 minutes, and we're going to get through the first part of this, which is the game tonight, and then the 6 o'clock, 1 o'clock slate on Sunday. We're going to start first with tonight's game, the Packers versus the Commanders, with the Packers to potentially, to some, as a surprise favorite at -3.5, with the over-under set at 48.5. This should be a really interesting game, and I'm looking forward to seeing what happens this week with the Packers. Is the hype real? Because Washington, probably before the trade of Micah Parsons, were probably led favorites in this game. So it is going to be interesting to see what happens. Remember, on this video, I'm going to flick through and I'm going to show all the ranks here so you can get access to all of those and be able to see them. But let's talk about our quarterbacks in this one, because both of them are going to be, potentially fantasy relevant here, especially Jaden Daniels. He is my quarterback 5 this week. Jordan Love is at 16. He's a flex-worthy play in a super flex for sure. In a standard 1 QB league, there is some upside here, but this is a tough D to crack. There's probably a few others I will have ahead of him. Not necessarily a QB I will feel 100% starting in 1 QB starting links, unless, of course, you're in a 16-team, 14-team bigger, then, that's fair enough. But in those sort of shallower leagues, probably not. Looking at the running backs here, I have Josh Jacobs as running back 6. I think they'll try and control the tempo of the game, and I think it's going to pay well for them to run the ball. They used him a lot last week. I think the utilization's there for him to really be exploited. I have Bill Krosky-Merritt at 27. There is all this noise that he is going to take over this backfield, and he showed it. Got in the end zone last week. Fully expect him to have some control. I have him just outside the top 24, but really he's in touching distance. I wouldn't feel too bad about playing him. In those PPR leagues, Austin Eckler is indeed worth playing in the flex, although don't start him in your flex because it's Thursday Night Football. But he is a flex-worthy contention. He is at RB36 this week. He will be higher in PPR formats. Moving on to the wide receivers here in this one. And again, with Green Bay, it's really interesting because they did spread the ball around a lot. Terry McLaurin is my highest ranked receiver in this game. He is at 23, followed by Deebo Samuel. He is at 34. There is a part of me that is tempted to move him up a little bit. The usage and the utilization did impress me, but it is quite hard to get him over some of these other guys who I think are going to get the ball a little bit more. I think you're going to see them try and get the ball to Terry McLaurin more. It's just because he sat out. But I do like him. I think he's well worth playing in most formats this week. And again, in a PPR format, there could be some nice volume there and probably feel better about that. He's just that low. I'm just not sure on the touchdown upside here. Jaden Reed is my highest ranked Packer receiver. He is at 44, followed by Matthew Golden at 50 and Romeo Doubs at 52. Not necessarily, I'm not itching to start any of these receivers. They spread that ball around a little bit too much for my liking last week, and I think we might get a similar trend this week. Tucker Kraft is my tight end 6 this week. Zach Ertz is my tight end 15. Start in a pinch, but think there's better options available for you. We move to the DSTs again with the over-under at 48.5. I don't really particularly want to start either of these defenses. Washington at 18, Green Bay at 19 for me. But it does mean that the kickers should be relatively decent. They're on the fringe of starting. Matt Gay at 15, Brandon McManus at 17. So I do think there's points in this. I do think that you're going to see the kickers be active, but I will also just have a bit of optimism on some of the other kickers here. I think there's better matchups to target. We're going to move to Sunday. The Dolphins are favourites in a game, which is even shocking to me over anyone else, considering what we saw last week. But the Dolphins are favoured. I've seen some lines where they're favoured by as much as 2.5. This line in Vegas has them at 1.5. Over under 43.5. This could be a game where really the under is in play, even at such a low number here, because I'm just not sure. I'm just not sure I could take the Dolphins as favorites in any game. Like, they were horrific. They were as bad as any team. The defense is really bad. Like, if I sit there and look and analyze this, I think, well, the Patriots will get better on offense. They just haven't got very good wide receivers, but they've got a run game. I like the quarterback. He can scramble. But I really like their D, and I think their D gives them opportunities to win. I can't say that about the Dolphins. So it's going to be interesting. I have to... as quarterback 26 this week, I have Drake May at 11. I'm bullish on the Patriots this week. I actually think they're going to pull out a result, and I feel pretty confident on them. I just realized I moved the wrong screen, but I'm going to move it to running backs anyway. We've kind of seen what's on the QB screen, so you would have already seen Drake May at 12. I'm going to move on to the running backs here. There's plenty to talk about in this one. At the running back position, Devon Achane is my running back 8 this week. I feel pretty good that he is the only one on that offense at the moment. I'm willing to just put any stock in and feel like he's going to, do pretty well with the ball. He pulled out some miraculous stuff last week just to even get them a score against the Colts. Trayvon Henderson is at 23. He will be the lead back for me. Ramondre Stevenson is at 42. I'm not convinced that any other running back in this game is worth any form of consideration. And I'm not starting Ramondre Stevenson. The time for him is pretty much gone, and we're going to see this move along. Wide receiver in this game is very thin, and that's why I'd shoot the under at the 43.5, because I've got Tyreek Hill at 26. Jalen Waddle, who's questionable, by the way, is at 42. He's the next highest. I have these Patriots receivers at 45, Stephon Diggs 46, Kayshon Boutte, and actually Kayshon Boutte has a good matchup. He's got a questionable tag, and that is the only reason I'm a little bit down on him. I could see me moving him up to about 40, purely because he has such a good matchup. So those that dropped all your fab on him this week, you probably have to play him because you spent the fab, and therefore it's not a bad week. He has an exceptional matchup. Demario Douglas is at 55, but I'm not really bullish on the wide receivers in this game. I think it'll be the running backs that get the majority of the fantasy points here, along with Drake May running. This looks like a good week for Hunter Henry. He is at 13. I really quite like his chances to do something here. I'm not in on Tanner Connor as a tight end, no matter how desperate you are. I think there's better options out there for you in the waiver wire. I do like the Patriots D this week. I have them at 7. I think that the Dolphins looked as bad as I've ever looked at them. They don't look like they got a plan or any cohesiveness. There's interceptions galore to be had there. I do have the Miami Dolphins all the way down in 26. I just don't believe this offense is actually going to make any turnover-worthy plays. So it will be interesting to see what happens. As for the kickers here, I do have Boygalas at 23, and I have Riley Patterson at 28. Again, not a week I'm expecting a ton of kickers to put up points here in these games. So we're going to move on very quickly from them. Moving on to the next one here. And we're going to be talking about the Bengals versus the Jaguars. Bengals, I thought, were pretty lackluster last week. We'd expect them to get better. They are 3.5-point favorites against the Jags. I think that is very generous for punters to jump on. I think that's a really good line to be taking advantage of here. I'm not sold on the Jags and this Jags revival under Liam Comey just yet. It is very short term, and I just think the Bengals, while playing very badly, will get better this week. I've Joe Burrow at 4. This is a good matchup for him. I think he will exploit it. I have Trevor Lawrence at 15. I'm just not convinced that he is the guy that everyone thought he would be, but he is in last chance saloon for me. So we'll see what happens. The running backs here are key. Travis Etienne, he is at 11. That usage last week was phenomenal. We keep that up all season. He is going to be turned huge value on his 8th round ADP. Chase Brown, he is at 14 for me. Better weeks to come. I think this could be a good one for him. And then Byashul Tootin, now with Tank Bigsby traded to the Eagles, is down in 48. He's one to watch if he's on your waiver wires. Make sure you go and pick him up. Moving on to the wide receivers in this one. Again, I talk half-point PPR. I don't have Jamar Chase at 1. I just think that offensive line is going to prevent them a little bit. I have him at 6. I do think he's got a decent matchup. I just think there's a few that might just get a little bit more points this week. Wouldn't shock me if he went for 200 yards at the same token as well. So I'm fine either way. If you like, he's a must start. Even at 1, at 6, it doesn't matter. He's a must start. Brian Thomas, I expect him to have a bounce back week. He is at 8 this week. T. Higgins is at 14. Travis Hunter is at 32. Would like to see more. He is going to contribute apparently and play more snaps on D this week. If your league setting has things such as tackles and awards them to offensive players, that might be a sneaky one to just to go and look at, just to get a couple of extra points and increase that floor. As for the tight ends, Brenton Strange, he's at 10. Great matchup for him against this sort of lackluster Bengals D. Noah Fant, waiver wire darling this week, is all the way up to 23. I could see him getting even higher than that. But at the moment, I feel pretty comfortable there because Mike Gesicki is in the background lurking. He is at 28. And then as for the DSTs in this one, the Bengals are down at 17. The Jaguars at 30. I don't see this one being pretty for the Jags this particular week. Feel free to clip that and tell me I'm wrong. But I do think it's a good week for kickers. Cam Little is at 9 and Evan McPherson is at 11. Next game up is the Ravens versus the Browns. The Ravens were phenomenal until they threw away the game against the Bills in what was an absolute instant classic. They are favorites by 11.5 points over the Browns, which I think is ridiculous. I can't see them covering that. I don't think the Browns are as bad as advertised. I think they've got a good passing offense. Really, they were quite unlucky against the Bengals last week. 11.5 points is huge. The over-under is set at 45.5. By the way, I don't think I mentioned the over and under of the Bengals-Jags game. 48.5, same as Thursday Night Football. 45.5, I feel is low. You're basically saying that on that kind of spectrum, you're kind of expecting the Browns to score, 15? 16 points? I just think the Browns have got a little bit more in them than perhaps what is being discussed. So I'm not sure I'm necessarily there. But that's fine. Lamar Jackson, QB2 this week for me. Feel pretty confident about what he will do, especially after a very special last week. Joe Flacco's at 25. And again, I think it'll be a tough matchup, but I've only got him there, I think, more on the... I've got him there more on the turnovers and the lack of rushing ability and potentially like the fumbles that could happen here. But I think he can throw for 300 yards in this game. It's how many touchdowns he's going to score. That will be because they'll have to cover off all the negatives there. But is there a world I see him finishing in the top 15? Then yeah, absolutely. I do this week. Derrick Henry's at 2. Phenomenal performance last week despite the drop. And then we've got the running back situation, which is very confusing. I still expect them to use Jerome Ford on the ground. Quinton Judkins isn't quite ready to play yet. Talks he was at the NFL discussing a suspension. Dylan Sampson, again, waiver wire darling week 1. His utilization and usage, it was very interesting in week 1, and therefore it's going to be really interesting to see what he does this week. He is at 35 for me. In PPR formats, he will be higher. This is a half-point PPR, so I have him kind of a bit lower. Jerome Ford at 38, I just don't see him running the ball much because I do think that there will be control here by the Baltimore Ravens, and I do think that they'll have to go into a negative game script and just throw the ball more, and that kind of puts the end to Jerome Ford. So I'm not overly keen on starting either running back this week, but if you're in a PPR league, Sampson becomes a little bit more interesting. Zay Flowers at 12, phenomenal performance on Monday night for him. Jerry Jeudy's at 36, Cedric Tillman's at 38. I was really torn because I do think there's a pathway to 300 yards. I do think there's a pathway to both of these guys having 100-yard games, which would move them up into the top 24. It's just how many receptions, where the volume is, and I have hedged here. I'll be honest, I have hedged. I think one of these guys will finish near the top 24, and one of these guys will finish in the 40. But I'm going to be honest with you, I'm not overly sure which, because the way that the setup is, Jerry Jeudy has a very hard matchup, and I can see them reflecting to a Cedric Tillman and use the tight ends more. And maybe it is that tight end usage that has got me capped a little bit here with these wide receivers. But there is a pathway to one of these performing outside up to the top 24. And if I had, if I was sitting there trying to work this one out, I would probably lean Tillman. I think I'm a little concerned with the matchup with Jeudy this week. I think he's got a tough matchup. I'm kind of hedging on both. I feel comfortable with them on the fringes of the wide receiver 3 range. But if I had to go with the guy with the upside, I would say it's Cedric Tillman this week. But it is upside, not guaranteed volume. Just be a little aware of that. Moving on to the tight ends. And again, Cleveland have become a bit of a tight end factory now with David Njoku. He's at 8. Harold Fanning, again, another waiver wire darling for week 1. I've got him at 14 this week. Again, his utilization is great in PPR leagues. He will be right up there. I have Mark Andrews at 9. I think he finds the end zone this week. It's just how much additional volume he is going to get. Should be a good matchup here for all involved. As for the Baltimore Ravens D, they are at 3. I think there's going to be turnovers galore here. The Cleveland Browns are at 28. I do think they will ship points. Moving on to the kickers. Tyler Loop, he had a good debut. He's at 3 for me. Andre Schmidt is at 30. And apologies if I got his name wrong. I'm not great with pronunciations. I'm a bit like Paul Merson in that regard. That's a niche UK reference there for some of you. Moving on to Cowboys and Giants. And Cowboys and Giants should be really fascinating game. The Cowboys are only favored by 4.5, which I think is criminal. I think they're better than that. I think they showed on opening day that they're better than that. So to see them that low, I think was a little strange. But that's okay. We are where we are, and so I'd be taking the Cowboys at 4.5. Over under set at 44.5. Feel that's a good line. Feel that does reflect what we might see here, especially so just don't have the confidence here in the Giants getting a lot of points here, and you'll see that in my ranks reflected. So we move to the quarterbacks here. And I think this will be a decent week for Dak Prescott. I have him at 12. I think it's a great matchup. Russell Wilson down at 31. I don't think he was to blame for last week, but I don't really know what they're doing on offense, and that worries me, and I worry about the potential upside here. Highest running back in this game is Javonte Williams. He's at 20. I really liked his usage. I just questioned if they get quite a bit in front, do they incorporate Jaden Blue, who was a healthy scratch last week? I don't really know. Tyron Tracy's down at 34. I think they're going to be a negative game script, so I think Cam Scannabo is going to get some work. He's at 44. I have Miles Sanders at 57. Again, I can see a pathway to him being higher than that, but not enough for me to want to start him. They might want to protect Javonte Williams because he does get injured a lot. CeeDee Lamb is my favorite receiver this week. He is at 1. Malik Davis is on the questionable report. I'm not worried. I think he plays. He is at 3. And then George Pickens is at 30. Wan'Dale Robinson, better in a PPR format. He is questionable. He always has a questionable tag, doesn't he? He's at 54.5 point. He will be much higher in a PPR league, especially given that target volume we saw last week. But it doesn't go for many yards. He's not going to get a touchdown. So in a half point, that is less valuable. In the tight ends, I have Jay Ferguson at 12. I do expect him to come along. They did pay him this summer, so I do expect him to do better. Theo Johnson is at 29, not a tight end I'll be looking to add anytime soon to any of my rosters. As for the DSTs, Cowboys at 8. Some might think that's low, but I just think there's better matchups out there, but I think it's good. And the Giants are at 24 for me. And then looking at the kickers, you got to have Brandon Aubrey at 1. This is a plum matchup here. Graham Gano is all the way down at 25. Moving on to the next one. And that's going to be the Titans versus the Rams. Rams favored by 5.5 points. Makes sense. Over under 41.5. So, and I think I'm probably okay with both of these. I think that's a good line. I don't expect the Titans to get up to speed and score lots of points early. So it's not a huge surprise here. 5.5 does feel like a Rams kind of margin of victory there. I think it kind of all makes sense. So I'm I can understand the logic here, in particular for the betting lines in Vegas here. Matt Stafford is at 24. I just think there's going to be not a need to really get crazy and risk it, and I see a lot more in the ground game. But he's at 24 for me. Cam Ward at 28. Again, I think he'll be fine. He's just going to need time to really adopt and acclimatize into the NFL, and it's going to take a little bit longer than a week. Kyren Williams is at 7. I think this is a great game for him. I was really tempted to move him up to about 4, and I can see a pathway getting him like top 3 this week, but I've gone a little conservative. He is at 7 for me. Tony Pollard's at 15. I think they will use him just to stop Cam Ward throwing the ball 50 times this week, because there's a scenario where that could happen. Puka Nacua is at 4. Loved the volume of utilization of him last week. Devontae Adams at 22. Again, really like what he was bringing to the team. And then I got the fringe plays, Calvin Ridley at 37. I think it's just going to take a while for Cam Ward to get comfortable. And I like Iomanor. The peripherals are really good here. It just didn't translate to the box score. He's at 48. I really see him coming through second half of the season, contributing quite nicely. Moving on to the tight ends here. Chicken Kwaku is the only one I'm half interested in starting. He's at 19. Tyler Higbee, he's all the way down at 38. And then moving on to the Rams D, they're at 4 for me. The Titans at 29. I don't think we'll be starting the Titans DST in many games this season. Josh Carty's at 18. Joey Sly at 31. Again, kind of represents where the over-under is at and shows where I think it's a pretty good line. Moving on to Jets, Bills. Bills favored by 6.5. Again, I kind of feel like after Monday night, I feel like that's quite low. I do think it could. I expected this to be like 8.5, 9.5, maybe even 9. But 6.5. I get it. Short week. Maybe that kind of makes sense and plays into it. The Jets D will keep them competitive. It will be interesting to see what happens here. I have Josh Allen as QB1. I feel pretty good about that this week and feel pretty comfortable with him being there. So he is my QB1 after last week's performance. And he will remain there. But I do think Justin Fields is again proving to be fantasy relevant. He's at 7 this week. Both these QBs are starters. Both these QBs are must starts for me this week. Moving on to the running backs, Breece Hall's utilization was insane last week. He is at 12 for that reason. Even in negative game script, I still think they're going to use him a lot. James Cook, he's at 18. He carries a questionable tag. Think he will find things a little trickier this week. Braden Allen, I do expect him to come into the fold a little bit. He's at 39, but I will probably be sitting him this week. I don't think the game script is going to allow for him to get a huge amount of volume. Garrett Wilson, he's at 16 for me. This is a tough assignment. He's going to have a tough week, but I do think there's yardage and there is points there for him. But he is at 16. There's a pathway to top 12, especially based on the usage, but I do think it's going to be a little bit slower than last week for him. Keon Coleman, he's at 43. He was a real stud last week. I really showed it in the box score. I think they're going to share it around a little bit more this week. So I am at 43 for him. Khalil Shakir, 47. Josh Palmer at 60. I think it's going to be a pretty even split between those. Maybe they run the hot hand, and maybe one of those. It could be Coleman. It could be Shakir that really rises up and puts up an 80, 90, 100-yard game. But it's really hard to call how that works in a game like this. Dalton Kincaid, he's down at 18 for me. This is just not the matchup. I want to get cute and start him. I think there's better matchups ahead for Dalton Kincaid. Buffalo Bills are at 11. The Jets are at 20. I think there's opportunities for turnovers for the Jets, but I do think the Bills will score quite a few points here. I have Prater at 14. He comes in to be the kicker for the Bills, and Nick Folk down at 29. Couple more games to get through. Got 3 more. Lions v. Bears. Lions favored by 6. Again, I think that's a pretty good line. I'm looking forward to seeing this one. I think it's one of the better games in the early slate, so one I'll be focusing on a little bit more. Jared Goff is down at QB 17. I think that Bears is sneakily good, and I think that there is some pieces there where I think they'll play some containment, and I think Goff's depth of target has shrunk significantly with Ben Johnson going. I also think Ben Johnson will know how to scheme Goff out a little bit, and that's why I'm a little bit cautious here on Detroit, because Ben Johnson will know what to do here. He'll know those players very, very well, will have an opportunity. I have Caleb Williams down at 22. I'm just not convinced that he is going to get to where we need him to get to anytime soon. So I'm a little bit out on him, and that's a personal opinion. And feel free to scream in the comments below that actually you think he's going to be a top 10 QB this week, and that's absolutely fine. But I just don't like this matchup. I think that they'll get really aggressive, the Lions, and I think they'll find a way to really nullify him this week. Jahmyr Gibbs is at 3. I think the game script suits him perfectly. I think DeAndre Swift will get some carries. He's at 22. David Montgomery is at 26. That borderline running back to play this week. Moving on to the receivers, I have Amon-Ra St. Brown at 9. Would like to see that bounce back happen for him this week. DJ Moore is at 24 this week. Roman Dunze is at 35. Jameson Williams is at 39. Luther Burden all the way down in the 70s. You don't need to start Luther Burden this week. Don't worry about that one unless you're in a super deep league. Then good luck. Sam Laporta's at 5. Think there's better matchups for the 4 ahead. Colston Loveland at 21. Think it's going to take a bit of time for him to come along, but I do think it will work well for him. But it probably won't be till October, November. Detroit Lions are at 10. Think they're going to play nasty D this week, and I think it will show in the box score. The Chicago Bears are at 21. I don't fancy starting them this week, but I do think there will be some weeks where they will be attractive, but it won't be this one. Jake Bates is at 8. Cairo Santos is the kicker, 24 on the week. Moving to Steelers v. the Seahawks. Steelers favored by 3. Aaron Rodgers, hats off to him. Wasn't really super confident on him doing a good job. But hey, he really, he looked really good. And, call it out where it's due. For 41 years old, he did look really good. And fair play to him. Like, he really shut me and a lot of people up that thought he wasn't good enough to play in this league anymore. So fair play to him. I have him at 20. And again, it's not the Aaron Rodgers trope. I just think, again, there's better matchups. I think the Steelers are good. I think he's competitive. I see a way of him getting to 14. Like, between 12 and 20, the points isn't all that much. We're talking a couple of points here. He outperforms by like 40 yards and gets an extra touchdown. He shoots up into a top 10 quarterback. Like, it's not a huge realm here. It's just like, it is quite tight, and that he's just at that tier. Sam Darnold is at 30. I mean, what went on where last week with the Seattle Seahawks? Their usage and the way that they just decided just to throw the ball to JSN all the time was just nuts. Moving on to the running backs, I have Ken Walker at 24. I have Jalen Warren at 25. I just think Ken Walker, a lot of the peripherals did excite me, but he is still coming back, and it showed. Jack Charbonnet is at 33. Kenneth Gainwell is at 45. There's room for him left. And then Caleb Johnson down at 53. Moving on to JSN, he's at 5. He had a 54% target share last week. It was just insane. It won't be that high again, but wow, we'll see what happens. DK Metcalf would love that target share. He's at 20. No other wide receiver here I'm touching this week. Moving on to the tight ends, I have none of them worth starting. Johnny Smith at 20, although I do think there's a path of trajectory for him. They're really trying to get the ball in his hands, but the low depth of target was a bit worrying. Pat Freemove's at 25. And Elijah Rojo, he's at 33. Again, I think there's a pathway for him later in the season, but it's certainly not there now for him to get targets. It's all JSN all the time. The Steelers at 6, Elite D, they'll really put pressure on Seattle. And then the Seahawks are at 14. I do think they will get to Aaron Rodgers a little bit, and I think that the D will make this respectable, but I do only see the Steelers winning this. Boswell is at 4. Jason Myers, he is at 20 for me this week. Moving on to last game of the schedule, and it is the Saints versus the 49ers. A game that I think would have had a much bigger line had Brock Purdy been playing, but the line is set at 3. Over under 40.5. By the way, the Steelers Seahawks over under is 39.5. It is the lowest of the week. It's even lower than it's even lower than Titans Rams, which is nuts. So it is the lowest line of the week again, which is why I'm just a little bit conservative on some of those plays. Saints 49ers over under 40.5, not much better again, with Mac Jones likely to come in here This is a tricky place to be. So we have. I haven't taken Brock Purdy out of my rankings yet. He has now got, as of the last 5 minutes, got the D. The news has already come out. He's going to miss 2 to 5 weeks, but he's at 33. I got Mac Jones at 29. I'm just keeping him there a little bit longer. I think when I published the update earlier, he was at 33. I'm going to keep that there just for a little bit longer. We will see what happens. Yeah, Spencer Rattler, by the way. Forgot to mention Spencer Rattler. He's at 32. So he's just above Brock Purdy. So yeah, I'm not starting any quarterback in this game whatsoever. And these offenses are going to be rough this week. I mean, the New Orleans Saints were as bad as everyone thought they would be. Christian McCaffrey with the old fake last week with all that utilization and usage. He's my quarterback one. I'm not worried about that questionable tag at all after last week. Alvin Kamara's at 16. Again, he'd be higher in a PPR league. Although the lack of targets last week to him really bothered me quite severely. Brian Robinson, he's at 43. You might see him come in if the 49ers do manage to get some points on the board. As for the wide receivers in this game, I think it's low. Pearsall's at 21. He had a phenomenal game last week. Chris Olave, he's at 28. He's going to get a lot of usage. Rashid Shaheed, he's at 51. They're the only receivers I want in this game. I'm not starting anyone else. I don't want to know anyone else in this one. As for the tight ends, no Kittle, he's on IR, don't forget. So Juwan Johnson's the highest rated tight end. I've got him at 16 again in the PPR league. I probably am a little bit higher. He got a lot of balls last week. Jake Tongs, who's come in for Kittle, he's at 30. Might be a sneaky sort of touchdown or bust play this week if you're absolutely desperate in those crazy deep leagues. San Francisco 49ers are at 4 on D. The Saints are at 31. Just not a week that I really expect them to do much of anything, and I don't rate this D at all. And then as the kickers, I'm not in on either of them. Blake Grupe's at 26. Eddie Pinheiro, who comes in for the dropped and waived Jake Moody, he is one step lower because he's just warming up. He's at 27. And that's going to do it for the matchup show. Part one. Good luck tonight. Hope it goes well for you. We got it just over 30 minutes. Not too bad at all. But good luck setting those lineups. And don't forget, as always, Rush Nation, keep rushing.